when you ask people, if you say to 10 people, do you think we get back more in services than we pay in taxes? Almost everybody says no. Right? A couple people will say yes, but almost everybody says no. So if you don't think we're getting our money's worth, why would you stay? Why would they let us go? We're either indentured servants, right? That doesn't work. Or we're slaves, and that doesn't work. We have to be allowed to go eventually, right? Well, I'm here to talk about Staten Island independence. I'm going to the CSI archives to see the Marchi files, which turned out to be very, very much stuff. You know, they have a lot of stuff. The only thing is at CSI, they'll bring out the boxes, then I have to go through the folders. So they gave us an index because I thought it was all digitized, but only the index was digitized, right? So we're going to go take a look. I went to the library up in Albany because they also have a library. I said, oh, gee, maybe I could do it there. And I went in to ask for the Marchi files, and they said, oh, we have files that go from maybe like 1972, maybe, I don't remember. The beginning date looked like to 1987. I'm like, well, what about from the 90s, right? Because this is when this happened. They're like, well, we don't have that. So I went through those files, the latest ones, and I found 2 bills regarding secession. So I asked the librarian, could you please get this information for me? And I get a phone call back, says, oh, we found some stuff, right? So it's not, I mean, I guess it has to be the same as what's here at CSI, but I don't know because maybe they archived it differently. Yes. So we were fortunate enough to get a very important report, which since you're here, I'll release to you. You guys, if you want an exclusive, you'll be the first to get this information and the video. But basically, it says that back in the 90s, when Staten Island was looking to secede, we were approximately $158 million in the black, which means that Staten Island, in tax revenue, took in $158 million more than we got in city services. Now, those are not my numbers. That is the number from, well, and that number is arguable, but no one is arguing the black part of it, right, that we're in the black. That number comes from the Charter Commission. That number is in a report that I can share with you that went to the New York State Legislature and to the governor and is stamped, received, you know, by the Senate, whatever the Senate accepted it. So basically, the myths and rumor of fiscal doom and financial destruction and tax increases are strictly myths. You know, they're designed by people maybe to prevent us from going forward. So we'll see what happens. So this was then, right? This does not take into account revenue that was supposed to come from the dump because the dump is gone, and then people say, oh, well, you know, now you don't have that revenue. But we do have Amazon, we do have the container terminal, we do have 200,000 more residents, or you know, whatever it is. So, you know, we have to look at it moving forward. This is the outline, you know, the flow chart, so to speak, and that's what I intend to do with the other elected officials.
So are you planning to kind of generate a new report with new costs and all of that stuff, kind of looking into what this
So like I'm pretty sure that Borough President Pirozzolo said that he was doing some sort of a study. So I'd have to turn you to him, because the answer would of course be yes, right? We have to update the numbers, okay? So, you know, we'll have to see what happens. Now, I don't think that the state or the city in any way are going to accommodate our wishes, you know, no matter what it is, right? Because I feel, listen, when you ask people, if you say to 10 people, do you think we get back more in services than we pay in taxes? Almost everybody says no. Right? A couple people will say yes, but almost everybody says no. So if you don't think we're getting our money's worth, why would you stay? Why would they let us go? Right? So I basically think that, you know, I don't want to reinvent the wheel. We already have, you know, the referendum. We already have the legislation, which is being sponsored by Senator Lanza. He's just updating that legislation. That will, of course, be co-sponsored by myself and my other colleagues from Staten Island. I can't speak to Assemblyman Fall, but I know that Riley and Tanusis are on board. And, you know, we'll see. If the state decides to not let us go, right, for whatever reason, and we had to go to the Supreme Court, you can't, we're either indentured servants, right? That doesn't work. Or we're slaves, and that doesn't work. We have to be allowed to go eventually, right? So if you think about Nassau County, about other regions, you know, other localities throughout the country, we're not the first to do this. We're among many people to do this, right? So it's not impossible. And our population of being just about $500,000 is in the exact center of the sweet spot where cities and municipalities can run efficiently and very, very well. So imagine a Staten Island that pulls out of New York City that has a lower tax base for sales of products in New York City. We're now attracting businesses to Staten Island, right? We're attracting shoppers to Staten Island. We're attracting diners to Staten Island.
Right.
You know, during COVID, we devastated, you know, pretty much the hotel industry because everything, and restaurants, because everything went to housing illegal migrants, right? So people weren't coming over for weddings. They weren't, you know, or if they did come over for a wedding, there was nowhere to stay. They had to go to Jersey, which meant they shopped in Jersey, which meant they ate in Jersey, right? I mean, that's just, you know, a little bit of a tangent, but the numbers so far seem to bear out that we would be in good shape. And there were organizations back then, lending companies that were very, very willing to loan Staten Island money to go forward with the purchase of municipal properties and vehicles and things like that. So I can't quote it exactly. So I've had this conversation, but basically there's a study that talks about the success of cities. You know, like when the city becomes too big, it becomes less efficient, right? So basically between 250,000 and 800,000 is that sweet spot. You know, we want to call it the Goldilocks zone, like a planet, is the Goldilocks zone of where cities can operate and function at peak capacity or peak effectiveness as far as taking care of the citizens. Once it starts growing over that, you start becoming susceptible to whatever it is that large cities become susceptible to. I really care about Staten Island. Staten Island would immediately become, I think, the second largest city in the state, right? And that's a big thing. And some people say, well, you know, Sam, I love being part of New York City. I love going to Manhattan. I love going to Broadway. I mean, I just love it, love it, love it. We're not geographically picking Staten Island out of the water and putting it in Iowa. We're still here. You're still a New Yorker. There's no doubt about it. You want to go to a Broadway show? Go to a Broadway show. It's no big deal. You work in Manhattan. You still work in Manhattan. Somebody from Manhattan works on Staten Island. They still work on Staten Island. And I address these things in a short video that I did.
So you're not talking about seceding from New York. You're talking about seceding just from the city and will still be part of New York?
Sure. So here's kind of what happens now, right? We pay our taxes. Some of our taxes are collected by the state. Now the state washes that money, and I don't mean it anything negative, but the state has to handle it. So as an example, if we gave $100 to the state, they may only turn around and give $80 back to the city because it has to be handled, you know, who's looking at it, what's being done. The city then goes, okay, they have their handlers too. So that $100, which is now $80, turns into $60, right? So if the state was giving us our money directly, the federal government was giving us our money directly, there's a significant increase in money that we're getting that we're not losing from being handled by other localities.
Hello, neighbors. For too long, the conversation around Staten Island's independence has been clouded by speculation. Today, I'm releasing information based on official New York State records. My goal is to replace the what-ifs with historical facts, especially for our dedicated city workers and residents who deserve clarity about what the record shows and what it does not. Let's start with the most important point. For independence to move forward responsibly, city workers would need certainty. Pensions would have to be kept intact, and employment would need to remain secure, either by maintaining existing positions or by transferring those services to Staten Island before any changes take place. City workers are the backbone of this island, and their knowledge and experience would be critical in any future city government. Now the numbers. We've all heard the scare tactics about fiscal collapse and massive tax hikes, but the historical record tells a much more measured story. The data shows that Staten Island had a strong revenue base and meaningful economic capacity that could support independence from New York City. While future decisions would matter, the idea that independence automatically meant financial ruin is simply not supported by the facts. Independence is not about rushing into uncertainty. It's about local control and accountability. It's about ensuring that the taxes we pay are used here to fix our roads, support our schools, and protect public safety. The state's own reviews show that Staten Island had the capacity to sustain itself if managed responsibly. We have the resources, the talent, and a strong sense of community. This report is not about telling anyone what must happen. It's about laying out the facts so people can make informed judgments. I encourage you to read this report and future reports carefully and with an open mind. Most importantly, I want to hear from you. If you take the time to review this information, I welcome your feedback, your concerns, and your questions. This conversation should be shared with people who live and work here. Staten Island's future deserves that level of care and honesty. Thank you.